Welcome to Dirt Magic, a podcast chronicling the Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship's mission of building sustainable recreation-based communities through stewardship, job creation, and world-class events, providing quality outdoor experiences through trail construction and maintenance in the Lost Sierra. I'm your host, Martin Scheel. On this episode of Dirt Magic, we delve into the world of ladies in cycling. From recreational rolling to world-class competition, we will explore the successes and challenges that young girls to seasoned pros must navigate from everyday riding to standing on the podium. Our guests today collectively are a multiple-time Olympian, World Cup cyclocross champion, gravel champions, mountain bike champions, barrier breakers, a former Bike Magazine editor-in-chief, a world-class events director, a journalist, a mentor, the winningest Downieville Classic all-mountain world champion, and even a former Division I college baseball player. Definitely a resume for success and a good group of people. Please welcome professional cyclists Katerina Nash and Anna Yamauchi, SBTS Marketing and Communications Director Nicole Formosa, and SBTS Events Director Kyle Stone. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, and really appreciate everyone for joining us on this episode of Dirt Magic. I'm pretty stoked that you're all here with us today to discuss a very important topic, and that is ladies in cycling. And, we may start at the leisurely rides around the neighborhood and maybe advance to some road, gravel, mountain biking on the dirt in the mountains. And of course, we can't forget about racing. And we're going to talk about that extensively today. I'm pretty confident that we've all dabbled in some form or all forms of the aforementioned riding categories. And I know a couple of you have taken it well beyond the next level. And with that being said, let's start with some background. And Katerina, let's start with you. And what was your first introduction to a bicycle? What gave you the hook to stay on the bicycle and make it a career? And what are you currently doing, and what have you done in the past? When it comes to cycling and racing.
Ooh, that's a loaded question, but first of all, I want to say thank you for having me back on the podcast. And I think this is a pretty fun way to start thinking about the bike season coming up. The bike season ahead, even though some of us are still skiing, it's always good to plan and think about the summer. And there's nothing better than talking about Downieville Classics. Let's do this.
Whoop, whoop. 27 years. This will be our 27th. And we literally started 30 years ago, and you're a huge part of that. But yeah, number 27 coming at you.
Yeah, that's quite impressive. I mean, I know a thing or two about organizing bicycle events now, working for the UCI last few years. And so it's, you guys have huge respect, like keep going, keep innovating. And even, the idea of today's podcast is to kind of brainstorm how to bring in more female athletes to Downieville Classic. And so, I just want to say thank you guys. Well done.
Well, you're a big part of that, and we really appreciate, all the participation of the years. And you are currently the all mountain champion that has won the most championships in the all mountain out of any competitor. And I think that is apropos as we're talking about ladies in cycling, that a lady sits on top of the all mountain world championship. So thank you for that. That definitely feels good all around. But, years ago, what was the first bike? How did you get on your first bicycle?
Well, I assume I had some little kid's bike. I don't really remember those years as much, but sort of remember transitioning into like a road bike and trying to ride my dad's road bike around and not quite fitting on it, and all those funny things of trying to crawl through underneath the top tube and, pedaling around in the yard. But when it gets like to mountain biking, it's definitely a lot more specific. I was in high school and just getting my first mountain bike and riding in the woods, then eventually getting to compete on the mountain bike. Like those are such formidable years for me, and really fun one to look back at. And never did I imagine that this, simple looking thing back then, now quite complex and quite amazing thing called mountain bike would take me this far in the world and in my career. And it truly has become, kind of my lifestyle and passion. And I couldn't be happier to like spend most of my life riding a bicycle in the woods. Like, I mean, I know it's been a job, but like, that's how I feel. I just ride my bike in the woods, and it's been pretty rad. So
Yeah, that's I have to admit there is for myself a few races back when I was much younger, and up from the Auburn area, and Nevada City up and of course to Downieville, riding the of course the downhill until it went to the all mountain, and of course at that point it became a job for me, not the riding but being involved with the event. And yeah, it's there's just certain things out there within an industry or what you've chosen for your life path, and it's pretty amazing when it can be something that you're super passionate about, you absolutely love, and even comical sometimes when someone asks you what you do for a living, and you can say, I ride my bike.
yeah, I definitely enjoy that, and just seeing the reaction of people, and like, and you get paid for that? Really?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Anna, what about you? What was the first introduction to bike? I mean, I know a lot of us were kids, and falling off, skinning our knees, but first bike experience, and then yeah, what hooked you? What made you think that, man, I'm good at this, I can do this? Yeah, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there is so much to that, as like Katerina says too. My parents were cyclists, so growing up, I was always around the bike, but they did a good job of never forcing it upon me. So I had my little I guess I probably started out with training wheels, I don't even remember that, and played in the backyard on weekends, and I was lucky enough to grow up in the mountains, so I was always surrounded by trails and dirt, um, but I really was one of the COVID stories, of course, where I found my bike when the world shut down, and it became this tool that I used kind of as a solo thing, to explore basically out my backyard, and kept going further and further and faster. And it's a really special moment right now because I feel like we're coming full circle of like the reason that I'm here saying that I too ride my bike full time as my job is in big part to Katerina and her taking me under her wing a couple of years ago as like a teammate and a mentor. And I think it just kind of speaks to what we're doing right now, sitting down kind of, and like how important these relationships and programs are in order to get more women on bikes.
Awesome. And currently is your career in cycling, or do you have a side gig as well?
Yeah, right now I'm full-time bike racing. I graduated college 2 years ago with a degree in architectural engineering. But I'm kind of lucky that I'm pursuing this pathway for now and kind of don't know where it'll lead, but it's really nice to kind of have these different worlds that I can be part of.
Well, I certainly think architectural engineering applies. When you think about a human being on a bicycle, the engineering, the science behind it, architecture, that can definitely span into some art. And I think you nailed it. You hit it perfectly. So, Nicole, and of course, yeah, folks, Nicole Formosa, she's our marketing and communications director here at the Sierra Beach Trail Stewardship. But beyond that, she is certainly a lady in cycling, and has been involved with cycling for quite some time. So give us the story, Nicole. Prior to the stewardship, um, you know, first time riding a bike, what hooked you into cycling? And of course, your career, really delved, into cycling, not only from the ladies' perspective, but for all perspectives for cycling there. So yeah, give us the scoop.
Yeah, I was kind of late in life to bikes, actually. I grew up kind of in rural ish Oregon and not in like a traditional neighborhood. So I didn't really have that experience of like riding around the neighborhood. I learned to ride a bike, but I didn't really start riding for real until I was in my early 20s. And I lived in Colorado at the time in the mountains. That's just kind of what everyone did was like, you skied in the winter and you mountain biked in the summer. And so I started riding, but it really took me getting into cycling media to be fully exposed to the sport. And I have a journalism background, and I started working in cycling media, just kind of like on a fluke. It wasn't like I'm this passionate cyclist and I've got to meld these two things. It just sort of happened, and then I started just riding everything, road, mountain, kind of dabbling in racing, just kind of wanted to experience the whole thing, and had a lot of really good opportunities to ride in places all over the world. And so just kind of took it. And yeah, and then, I spent 15 years in cycling media, maybe almost 20. Um, and really tried to make, like a central part of my work, just telling stories about women in cycling. It just seemed like in such a male dominated industry, there just weren't, you just didn't hear the voices as much. And so, yeah, that's always been a focus of mine. And it's been great to be able to bring that to the stewardship as well. And as we're, looking at these events and trying to bring more women in, being a part of that is just sort of a continuation, and yeah, something I'm really excited to do. So that's me.
So as a lady in cycling and journalism, did you ever have the opportunity to cross paths with the furry knuckle, or AKA Mr. Mike Ferrantino?
Oh yeah. I was his boss for years.
Yes, boy, I don't envy you that position on that one. He'd have been fired 5 minutes into it. But I love Mike. But yeah, I can't imagine being his boss. But yeah, anyway, that's some anecdotal stuff there. And just in case the furry knuckle himself pulls up this podcast and listens, and he knows that I still find ways to get after him. Years and years gone by.
Yeah.
So Kyle, and folks too. Kyle Stone's our events director. He also runs our youth crew program here at the Sierra Beach Trout Stewardship. But Kyle's in a unique position where over the years we've had different staff either manage events or take a higher level, which included events. But it's really been refined since Kyle joined us. And I mean, he really is. He's the omniscient view, the top of the pyramid when it comes to events, either much to his chagrin, but we're all pretty excited about that. And so for you, Kyle, ladies in cycling, has kind of been an issue that has come to you organically, because I mean, obviously the surveys that go out when we talk to all of our riders that come to our races, you're the point person that gets the accolades, the positive, the constructive criticism, and probably some cuss words, along the way as well. But yeah, give us your background. How did you get into cycling? What prompted you to say, hey, I need to be more involved with this, and then of course coming to us as a trail building organization. But yeah, give us the story.
Yeah, so I think I'm a little bit of a combination of Anna's story and Nicole's. I feel like it's kind of a fluke that I'm in this position. And then I also got into cycling around COVID times. I was a former college D1 baseball player, had 4 knee surgeries, and kind of figured out I couldn't do the things I really wanted to do. And a friend introduced me to mountain biking. Did our first ride on Mount Huff here. I'm pretty sure I went over the bars like 3 times. I was pretty terrible, but I loved it. And just kind of continued to grow that love for it. And that kind of naturally led to me following the Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship and what you guys were doing. And just kind of realizing, hey, this is a really cool organization that does something really amazing locally. Didn't really know much about the events at that time. But, long story short, here I am as the event director, which I love, and it's fantastic. And I've kind of, I think, learned a lot over the last 3 years. And one of the things that I'm all about is just like seeing at what we can improve. Like, no event is ever perfect. There's always room for improvement. And one of the things that is very apparent is, just like everyone, a lot of these other events are doing too, is just seeing that there's not as many ladies as there are men in cycling, and what can we do to change that? I've got two young daughters. One of them is starting to bike around. She's 8, and she actually can pedal it pretty good. And I'm like, man, I want opportunities for her. So, a lot of this too has come from Katerina's feedback and surveys, and I've reached out to her directly, specifically in regards to the Downieville Classic, and like, okay, what can we do to make this experience better for women overall and less intimidating? Because the race course itself is intimidating, right? I mean, not to Anna Katerina, but to most people. So if I'm just a lady in a sport class, how do I get her to come out and race the Downieville Classic, and to get more people engaged to that capacity is something that's really important to me.
Well, and that's good, and thanks, Colin. That's a great segue too, because ladies in cycling, this isn't anything new. It didn't take a constitutional amendment, for ladies to ride bicycles. Thank goodness. But when you go back, historically, even to the late 1800s, it's kind of funny when you think of maybe the historical path of ladies in cycling, and this is a horrible picture to look at, but it's for some reason it pops into my brain, and it's like the late 1880s, that the what is it, the James Starley, the big bike or the high wheel bike, whatever it was. And there was always those postcards of the lady in a full dress, probably was a formal dress, riding the super front big wheel bike. And it just seemed like that was the stigma of ladies in cycling, and it just stayed that way for so long. And then, of course, bicycles being designed, quote, for ladies that have to wear a dress and a skirt, where the top tube is angled down, and it's just I see those, and to me, they're, at this day and age, they're archaic, and because the ladies I see in cycling, and two of you are here between Ed and Katerina, are some of the fast movers on the planet. Some of the most badass riders that I've ever, seen and experienced up close, but when it comes to the demographics of men and women in cycling, obviously there are more men than women that ride. In Europe, that gap is actually less than the United States, which I was a little bit shocked when I looked that up. But those percentages that are close from maybe men and women on bikes just riding, when we get to the racing aspect of it, it's drastic changes. And for our events alone that we do, from the Lost and Found Gravel Festival, the Downieville Classic, and even looking back in data from Grinduro, when Giro and SBTS, first produced that back in 2015, historically, 20 to 30% participation in the races from ladies, and 70 to 80 in the men. And there hasn't been a lot of change in that, and which is striking. To me, it means, okay, we've been doing something wrong, because there are rad ladies on bikes. When I first started mountain biking, rode in Eldorado Hills, night riding, they're sometimes, many times, half of our night riding group, half of our group going out to Salmon Falls or riding up Auburn or even coming to Downieville were ladies. But when it got to the race component of it, those percentages changed quickly. And Katerina, for you, being a steward of the industry, being, literally an icon for young ladies, coming into a cycling. I mean, what was your perception, back when you first started racing to now? And I mean, the percentages just haven't changed. I mean, what do you attest that to? When you first started racing, what were the barriers, the challenges, and why are they still here?
Well, it's not that simple, right? Like, there's regional differences, there's discipline differences. There certainly are new developments in the cycling industry, and all these play big roles. For me, just watching bike racing in Northern California, the numbers at the smaller events for women were never that big. It kind of fluctuates depending who's living in the area, and do they have a group of stronger athletes that are perhaps training together for to kind of go after the bigger goals. But like, it's never been really big numbers. And as as the competition gets stiffer, those numbers get more equal. And like, for example, in World Cup cyclocross events this past season, like some of the women's fields were bigger than the men's field, you know. So it's not like necessarily same everywhere, but I think a lot of the grassroots, a lot of the regional certainly attracts more men. Uh, One of the things that I think is hard for Downieville Classic, it certainly has this reputation of being a little bit more challenging. And so if you think about the mentality that men and women bring, not just to cycling, but kind of the rest of the life, you know, like women look at job description and they say, well, I'm not going to apply for this one because I may not have 30% of this requirements, you know. And the guy looks at it and he says like, oh, yeah, I don't know some things, but I got this, you know. And I think that's like, that plays a big role in mountain biking, where there are female athletes that might be curious about Downieville Classic, but they haven't had an opportunity to come test the course, see it in that less threatening, non-racing environment, to get familiar, get help from the local racers, and just, you know, they just need a little bit more gentle introduction to the sport, and especially Downieville Classic. And I think that's a really good starting point for our discussion. Is like, how can we get women ready before the race takes place, so they're not jumping in into a technical, intimidating event the day of the race. You know, I think it's going to take a certain type of a racer that is okay to say, okay, I'll sign up without knowing anything about it, but probably majority would really, really benefit from having a little bit of an introduction, whether that's a clinic, pre-ride, or whatever that might be. So.
Well, and thank you. Yeah, and that's a very good point. And Anna, you, I mean, there's a couple of connections here with you. I mean, obviously, you know, with Katerina, you know, you have a connection to Katerina when it came to gravel racing. And I mean, Katerina has been, I am very confident, and an excellent mentor, you know, for young ladies getting into cycling, and whether or not it was going to be a race career or just, you know, cycling itself. But, you know, Anna, as you as a mountain biker, you know, obviously, you know, this is your deal. You know, you're going to do this, but you do have a connection with Katerina when it came to gravel riding. And maybe if you could just touch on that a little bit, and then we'll go into something that Katerina touched on specifically to the Downieville Classic.
Yeah, I mean, I came in on Katerina's program, and it was kind of a mix of mountain bike and gravel stuff. And it's kind of funny, unlike her, I kind of lean towards the really long races. So the 100-mile, 5-hour races. And she was like, that can be your thing. And we can show up at places like Cactus Cup or Downieville together and do the shorter, maybe arguably more fun racing together. And so it was a lot of fun to kind of have that year to explore what races fit me best and what I enjoy the most. And it was really fun to put myself into these races that I was really intimidated by and kind of honestly scared of, like, what does Downieville look like, especially during a race effort. But to have someone to kind of walk me through what the race will look like step by step. And Katerina and I pre-rode at all the races together, and it was like so nice to just have someone to kind of help boost your confidence and understand that, like, I am capable of it. Because I mean, even showing up and racing in the pro category, I was like, will I make it down waterfall? Like, how fast am I going to go down third divide? Like all of these questions, I think, as kind of someone newer to racing, I guess in their mind, they probably don't realize that I still show up at the start line in the pro category and think about the same things.
You know, and that's interesting too. And that, you know, that brings us to, you know, last year's Downieville Classic, and Nicole, you know, you were a big part of this, but we instituted, a program where we could in fact get some ladies on the mountain and pre-ride. And yeah, I mean the Downieville Classic and just the Downieville trail system in of itself, the downhill, the cross country course. It's a technical course. It's Downieville. You hear horror stories, but then you hear the good stories of the adrenaline rush, how much fun it is. I mean, it truly is a magical place. It'll change your DNA, once you experience it. But it can be a foreboding step to take for any rider. It doesn't matter, male or female. But on the race course side too, for certain, it's not like showing up, maybe at a cross country race where it's going to be 3 laps, or something similar to that, or maybe more of an enduro portion, even like Sea Otter, where the downhill course is very short. It's minutes, or even seconds, as composed to dozens of minutes, to get down the course. But last year, we decided to take a path, and Anna, you were a big part of this too, and Nicole, I'll go to you on this one. So, give us the impetus of, hey, let's get some more ladies racing the Downieville Classic, but let's get them on the course beforehand. And yeah, let's let them see the course. Let's ride. Let's talk about it. Let's take some expertise from those that have been on the course before. Let's stop, smell the roses, look at the waterfall and go, yeah, that's gnarly. Figure out how to get through it in a fun way. And then come back on Saturday and Sunday and just kick some serious ass, in the ladies category. So Nicole, kind of give us the background on that, and Anna, you can chime in too. But I think this was a very successful program. I want to do it again. Katerina even mentioned it in some correspondence about even prior to the race, doing that very same thing. And I think that can be taken to other venues, Sedona, doesn't matter. You pick a venue that's got some technical riding. But yeah, Nicole, I know I'm rambling, but yeah, give it to us. The kind of the ladies initiative to let's explore the Downieville Classic and let's get these ladies on the race course.
Yeah, I mean, that was really Anna saying like, hey, like a mentorship type program could be huge for the Classic. And yeah, so we kind of put together a Thursday ride that we, sort of like, there was a group of women who were, you'll have to remind me, Marty, how we basically like put a call out at the, Downieville had already sold out, but we had some spots that we were able to open up for women who had wanted to race all mountain or had been interested, but weren't able to get a spot. And we opened that up, and it was pretty shocking to see how quickly they were gone. I think we had 10 spots, and there was so much interest. And I think that showed us, like women are interested in this. It just maybe requires a little bit more support, or that, being able to say like, hey, we're going to have this group. You can pre-ride the Downieville downhill. So if you've never ridden it, you'll have some sort of some people to kind of follow down the downhill. There'll be time to session. There'll be time to like spend at the waterfall, and just kind of maybe making it just a slightly more comfortable. Being able to have a place to camp, since that's obviously a barrier to anybody who wants to come to Downieville. Just kind of trying to alleviate a few of those things that make somebody go, it's not for me. And that Thursday pre-ride, and this is probably where Anna can speak because I had a travel snafu and totally missed it. But it was really cool to talk to the women who did it afterward. And it was just such a positive experience and something they could take with them into the race that weekend. And then to see a couple of those women on the podium too was amazing. So it was just such a positive experience. And I definitely think it's something we can grow and hopefully try to do. Like I know Katerina's talked about this, hopefully try to do, maybe a weekend that's not so connected with the race. So we can get people up that it's not necessarily that race environment, or you haven't already taken the plunge to register. Maybe you're just curious, and we can get people up to, ride that downhill in a, like a really friendly environment before the race, months before the race even happens.
I can see it already, and the ladies Downieville weekend, courtesy of Katerina Nash and Anna Yamauchi, with lodging provided by the Yubaverse, which of course is formerly the Lure, where everybody camped. But hey, there's some cabins there, and Matt, the owner there, he's an awesome dude, and I think we could swing this. But Anna, you really dug into this one, and I'm sure that you had some ladies that wanted to ride the Downieville Classic, wanted to race it, but like, man, I've never been there before, and all I see are these videos and social posts, and Downieville. It's not like going to Sacramento or Reno or Salt Lake or Sedona. Downieville's a commitment. it's in the Sierra Nevada. It's middle of nowhere. There's no cell phone coverage. There's hardly no lodging. Definitely none during the race. There's barely any camping. And it's the cross country is 27 miles point to point. The downhill's 15 miles. It's intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. I think like even touching back on what Katerina was saying earlier, just inherently how men and women communicate differently. I think a big thing about it is men like to describe this course as gnarly in a good way. And I think the way like women's brains are coded, immediately it's like, oh, gnarly, that's scary. I like this course might be too much for me to handle. And I think like a big thing is kind of maybe shifting that language or at least the culture to realize that like you can do it, even if it means getting off your bike and walking waterfall. So what? And I think that was kind of the whole, I guess, emphasis of the pre-ride was getting these women together to show each other that like we are all capable of it. And I think having peers to look at and to ride with is super helpful just to find that confidence and to realize that you are surrounded by like women who are in the same position. So even just coming to racing so recently, I feel like I have a good balance of like how it is to feel in that intimidated space versus like now how I operate as a pro racer who has done this a couple times. So it was really special to get a group of girls together and it was really, really cool to just see the stoke that everyone fed off of. And we stopped and we sessioned things. Um, and the coolest thing was the A line at Waterfall. I'm pretty sure almost everyone except 2 or 3 girls rode the A line, and I had not ridden that until that day. And I was like, "Holy smokes, this is so cool." Like I've never been surrounded by this many like talented women. And I think most of us showed up that day thinking that we were not going to do that, but you just see each other and feed off of that energy. And like that moment, especially, was so just incredible to see that like we just need to put women in the right environment and we will thrive.
Those are very good points, and I think that's something that we need to continue to nurture, promote, and bring into to all of our events. Not just Downieville Classic. And if we're gonna infect, ladies cycling and ladies in racing, mountain bike, gravel, or otherwise, then I think that's something we definitely need to move forward. And Kyle, you can touch on this too, because on the race component side of it, I mean, Katerina's been a squeaky wheel, and I mean that in a positive way, Katerina. Over the years, but I just it's not that we were ignoring Katerina. I just don't think that we had our own systems in place to look at the challenges being brought to our attention, even just start line challenges. I mean, something as simple as start line times, because we all share the same course, especially when it comes to the downhill. But Kyle, you had the opportunity with these surveys and your conversations with Katerina to kind of formulate a plan, and we've put that plan into place. And we're talking specific to the Downieville Classic, but of course, folks, this can be applicable to any race. It's got some technical riding, whether it's a downhill or a technical cross country course that has some sections where it can be intimidating for anyone, for that matter. But Kyle, give us kind of the impetus of where we were, where with the Downieville Classic, where we are now, and how that kind of transition and the help of Katerina and other ladies and racing, got us to where we are now. And we're going to find out. We're going to give it a whirl this year. And of course, Katerina and Anna, we want very honest opinions when that survey comes back out in emails. But yeah, Kyle, give us the scoop.
Yeah, I took a look at surveys over the last couple of years, and there's a lot of feedback, just kind of echoing Katerina's feedback too. Just a lot of on cross country day, aggressive passing, by men, especially in like the older expert categories, which it's a bummer, and it's something we talk about at the start line, but inevitably it happens because you have these guys that are taking it too seriously. Same thing happens on downhill day, where you're on a gnarly single track, and people are trying to pass each other, trying to get the fastest time. So there's a lot of just logistics with the race itself that it's difficult for people to pass each other. We took a really deep dive on the data, just looking at finishing times for both cross country and downhill over the last few years. Put some graphs there to really visually see, how the categories are interacting with each other. Long story short, we're making some changes due to that data. So cross country day, we're going to have a separate start wave for the women after the expert men. So hopefully that alleviates some of that passing. And then on downhill day, the pro ladies are going to get 1 minute intervals, just like pro men, which I think is going to be really good. And there's going to be a 10-minute buffer before and after the pro ladies. We're really hoping that alleviates that passing from the group behind pro ladies, and then also passing the slowest pro men, because Katerina has to do that when she goes sub 50 on the downhill, and some of the slowest pro men are going 1 hour. She's having to pass people. So we want to alleviate those interactions as much as possible. We're also adding some 10-minute gaps behind the largest groups of categories in the field, reordering some categories, and then within each category, we're looking at last year's performance and ordering the starts within the category based on that finishing time from last year. So lots of changes that we hope make a big difference in the overall experience for women this year.
And thanks, Al. And so Katerina, from your experience in racing, are other races, doing this? Are they starting to do this? Are those voices being heard? If it comes to a more technical, and sometimes it may not even just be technical, it could be a gravel race, but the very same start line issues, or if it's something like the Gravel Earth series, like we're part of that with Lost and Found, there's some no drafting, if it's amongst, the gender, women can't draft men can't draft women. But are you seeing some positive changes in that realm now with other races that you're involved with?
Absolutely. I mean, I think we all are evolving, and it has been great to see the women cycling grow across all the different disciplines, and that comes with new challenges. Where, for example, you guys have a unique concept. It's a 2 days of racing. It's a downhill. It's a cross country. And you're serving quite broad spectrum of customers. I used to show up at Downieville Classic, and I was thankful for the opportunity to be out there with the elite men, because that was my training. That was my way to push myself to prepare for a world championship or World Cup or whatever, But then, I was maybe one of the 10 athletes that had that mindset, that was happy to be out there duking it with the men, not everybody else. So that's the challenge you guys are facing, and you have to identify your demographics and what kind of event you want to build and keep it. You want to keep Downieville Classic awesome and little rowdy, and everybody's going to deal with a little bit of passing and dust and all those things, because that's what's awesome about it, right? But you have to listen to the voices and see how you can evolve and change and tweak a little bit. And I think it's super exciting that you guys looking into all the times and just comparing to making it just more favorable to the feedback, you know. And yeah, as far as what's happening at the other events, I think it's driven by the riders, you know. If these local events no longer want to be co-ed, it's pretty simple to talk to the race promoters, and most of the race promoters, they're willing to change things around and see how it fits in their schedules. Obviously, there's also the completely different racing of UCI racing where the categories never meet. There's no stress. So like I've been in that space of all of it my entire career, and I appreciate the only women's category, but I've also uh, gotten better and also maintained a lot of my fitness because I have been able to race with men for last 10 years since I left the World Cup racing. So it is interesting, and it's up to you guys to identify what's important and what you want to do with the Downieville Classic. And we're here just to help you out and navigate some of those challenges. So
Anna, with someone that hasn't quite hit the illustrious career as Katerina has yet, but I know you're on your path, well on your pathways to that. Yeah, so I mean, from someone that's new, and obviously you have a voice as well, but I mean, do you feel that your voice is being heard? Maybe not so much with Downieville, because I mean, we're talking about it now, but you mentioned the Cactus Cup. I mean, obviously there's some other races that you're involved in that are not like Unbound, where it's 100, 200 miles in gravel. Really, people are really spread out. It's not a single track, but I mean, do you feel that race promoters, for when you choose to go single track on the mountain bike, where it's going to be dicey, it's going to be hard to pass, do you feel that your voice is being heard?
Yeah, for sure. I think it does vary so much race to race, as Katerina said, and I think like there are valuable ways to race with other categories, and there's definitely a lot of times where it's appropriate to have separate races. And I think overall, like the scene is shifting so much to like just make sure female voices are heard first and foremost. But I would say a good example of kind of this discussion is last weekend I raced the Huffmaster, the grasshopper race, and there were only 11 women in the pro category. Just it's a early season NorCal race that's pretty mellow and local. And Mig came to us and asked whether or not we would want our own start or to start with the pro men. And we ended up starting with the pro men, but it was really, really valuable for a lot of us to have that just training race where we could stay in the peloton with the men for 40 miles and kind of get that race simulation and stimulus. But at the same time, it is unfair when I have certain men towing me around and maybe they're stronger or slower than the other men that other women are with. So it's kind of always something that's a case to case basis depending on the race. And I think with single track, that provides a whole nother dynamic. Um, and I would say like bike race last year, Katerina was there as well. And they had staggered starts just based on your final time. So it wasn't based on your gender or your category at all. And I think that was valuable to be racing with people around your same speed, but then there was, of course, struggles with that dynamic as well when the women are racing each other, but there are men in the mix too. So once again, it just comes back to kind of that discretion on a race to race basis and ultimately listening to the women who are racing. And it is our job, it is our career, there is money on the line. And I think just as long as you continue to have those discussions, it will end up in going in a positive direction.
Yeah, and Nicole, I mean, what do you feel the pulse is, from the journalistic side? I mean, there's so many periodicals, online services, magazines that we still deal with, as an organization. And you're obviously the huge component for us for that. But, sometimes you have a little bit more access to, the pulse of what the industry is doing. But, do you feel when it comes to how races are being promoted, or the stories that are being told, or even the reporters themselves on site, are we seeing some positive direction, really helping to promote, the ladies, not only in cycling, but ladies racing?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's positive. It seems like the biggest part of this discussion seems to be happening in the gravel world, and I think that's because it's evolving, kind of more than other disciplines. So I feel like that's where like the bulk of the conversation is, from kind of like the race promotion athlete standpoint. Um, but yeah, I mean, like as an example, women competed in Rampage for the first time ever last year, and the New York Times covered it. They had a reporter and a photographer on site, like out there in Virgin, Utah, and it was a huge story for the New York Times. So just to see that mainstream media covering such a huge development in women's competition, I mean, it's just, that is huge, like you to get that kind of media exposure and that kind of press for this niche of a niche of women's mountain biking is incredible. So seeing stuff like that happen, is such a promising sign. And I don't know, I kind of think there could always be more women, exposure for what women are doing in athletics. And also on the journalism side, there's that's shifted a lot over the years, and there honestly aren't as many women writing about cycling as there have been at times. And so, you kind of hope that's just sort of like an ebb and flow and it'll change again. But I feel like that, that's one of the things that could always be improved. And it's hard. It's just a hard landscape right now in terms of outlets and, what's still there. But yeah, I think there's a lot of positive signs for sure.
I'm going to have to, this is going to be a pretty broad assumption here, but, I don't remember any article ever in the New York Times that ever mentioned the Red Bull Rampage until the ladies were involved. So, got to chalk one up for the ladies there, getting to a large organization like the New York Times. And it is a very important story, for sure. And it took way too long, in my opinion. And of course, I'm not an insane writer like those that put their lives on the line every 10 feet during the Red Bull Rampage. But it was awesome. Awesome to see the ladies there. The competition was great. The writing was great. And, I feel like a breakthrough was made, and maybe that opened the door, to some other events and other, organized, functions like the Rampage, when it comes to things like that. I know the motocross world, continues to grow with ladies, on motos. I think it still has, a lot to go to get where they need to be. But, the journalistic side, I think the coverage, definitely helps. And that brings me, kind of to the next topic is, the progress that's being made, is what's happening out in the world right now, in a positive direction. And, Kyle, you, found a race, a very popular a race, and, they had instituted a program to very aggressively get more pro ladies involved. And, they basically said when the race was done is we've had the most, pro ladies in a mountain bike style event than any other event in the US. And it was probably correct. And, I guess the unfortunate thing is the the amount of pro ladies that were there was awesome. But when you look at the percentage of the pro ladies that were still there, you're like, man, we're not there yet. Granted, it'd be great to see 50-50 or whatever. And in a pipe dream, we'd like to see it fair and equitable across the board, or maybe even more ladies than men. But you found something, And it kind of created a spark for you to see if possibly the stewardship, we could do something in our event. So maybe just talk about that a little bit, and how that, affected your vision of how our events potentially can bring more ladies, pro ladies, elite ladies, sport, beginner ladies into our race components.
Yeah, I think you never want to be like a total copycat, but at the same time, you want to look at what others are doing and the things that they're doing well and the things that are helping make improvements, especially when it comes to this topic. You got to take notice, Um, so it kind of just started an internal discussion, and Nicole and you, Marty, we're all a big part of it. Of just like, what can we do in 2025 to grow, not just pro female participation, but female participation as a whole. So at Lost and Found in Downieville, we're going to have some common camping locations, just where women can feel supported and be with each other when they're not racing. And then, we also kind of looked into some sponsorship of entries and things like that. Just exploring what we can do, and partners that can help us put together a program where we can get more women involved.
And you bring up something too, and I know that with that particular race, and we'll just call it's the Breck Epic, and they had a program, and they had a very large lady sponsor, a great organization that promotes ladies in cycling come in and covered some registration fees, and it's like, hey, come on out, we've got you covered, but we want you to come out, we want you to race, have a great time, and help promote the industry. And I think that that's something that we want to do. We have to be careful, obviously, in this day and age. You have to be careful, fair and equitable, all over all categories of everything we do. And our ambassador program that we've initiated, and it's a work in progress and growing, but trying to invite, well, for all riders for that matter, men or women, but obviously, trying to get more ladies in cycling is to create a way for a conversation to continue to happen, albeit social media, through internal communications for, ladies race organizations, but say, hey, we're going to find a way. We're here to support you. So let's work together and find a way, especially folks like, you, Anna, you, Katerina, that really do carry a lot of weight. And there's a lot of other pro ladies, elite ladies, and all of cycling, that can carry these heavy buckets of water that'll bring more young ladies to cycling. And, Katerina, I know you've been mentoring, lady riders for quite some time, which is huge. And we need more folks like you. And, Anna, you're going to be in that position if you're not already in it. My daughter is 7, and she's going to be looking to both of you. She already loves bicycles. And, I want her to be afforded, those opportunities to, where she doesn't have any fear of joining a race or riding Downieville, or feels like just like any other person showing up on registration day and grabbing that number plate and getting ready to kick some ass on the court. But, it is difficult. It's hard, to do the right promotion and follow the rules, but at the same time, some of those rules sometimes seem to kind of counter effect what we're trying to accomplish. But we're going to continue, we're going to continue to try to promote any type of program, whether it's an ambassador program to help get more ladies in cycling. And we certainly want to lean on you, Katerina and Anna, to help us do that. But you guys are definitely more traveled when it comes to race events, because we have our 2 to 3 that we do. And what have you seen currently, in the industry that is helping to aggressively promote, more women in cycling? What's working? What do you, and Katerina, we'll start with you. What do you think is working right now? What's been a good program, similar to Breck Epic or something else to really help push pro ladies, into cycling, which is in my opinion trickle down. They're superstars, and it's like any other. If it's actors, athletes, you name it, superstar, the youth is going to follow a superstar and say, I'm going to do that. That's my dream, mom. That's my dream, dad. And how do we how do we get those young ladies to follow that dream? And is that happening? Is it working?
Everything takes a little bit of a strategy and planning and patience. Like I think if you look at NICA, I assume the numbers there are pretty decent. I'm not following it that closely, but the few races I go pre-ride with the kids, like there are always a lot of little girls, and as they advance, like not everybody gonna stick with it, but that's not always the most important thing. It's just like having the opportunity to at least try and let them choose what they want to do with the bike. Is it racing, is it just riding, is it coming back to it in 10 years and knowing that like this is what I did. um, so I think it's just about growing those opportunities, and obviously all sorts of ambassador programs and bike rides specifically targeted to learn skills and introduce the sport. I think mountain biking in general has been uh, one of the best in cycling. I mean, as far as the international racing, the World Cup's been pretty much equal since the 90s, as far as the courses, as far as the pay. Uh, there are, challenges in the other disciplines, but everything is being reviewed and looked at and adjusted. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of good things happening, and there's certainly a lot more female riders that can say that they are professional riders and they are making living in cycling. And maybe it's not the career that they're gonna stick with forever or make become rich or anything, but I think it's so fun to just give it a go. There's always those other jobs that you can try later on, and so having that opportunity to say, yes, I was a professional bike racer for 3 years, and I traveled around the world, the United States or whatnot, and I got to see all these different places. So I think that's the main focus. It's not necessarily about like how do we get these little girls to the Olympics. I know that's a fun kind of vision that everybody kind of aspire to, but I think it's more about like let more people try it, let more people experience the beauty of mountain biking, and then let them do whatever they want to do with it. uh, and hopefully it's lifelong passion, and that would be the best. Yeah.
I fully agree with that. And I think when you do that and you go that path, you know what? Strange things happen, just like Olympians being born. And it'll just by natural forces will happen. So, but I agree. The most important part is, boy, let's get on the bike. Let's get them on the bikes. And Anna, what do you see now? And you're continuing to race. Your career is progressing forward. Do you feel that positive movement is being made? Can you see the change happening in a positive way that'll continue to help support you and like, hey, I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to keep moving forward. And if a young lady approaches me or a girl, and says, "Oh, I love watching you race, and I want to do this. Can you give me some advice, or should I do it?" How are you going to answer that question to like a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old that's getting ready to take that plunge?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot there, but I would say that I am a product of the positive movement, I would say. I did do a year of NICA back in my junior year of high school, and I honestly just didn't stick with it because I would show up to practice or the races, and I felt like I was just riding with the boys. I didn't really feel like I had a community, and at that point, I didn't really think there was more to the world than just that at that point. And I think coming back now, it's been so special to like find success and then find an industry with open arms, just mostly as like North American gravel scene shifts and grows. I think there has kind of been a resurgence in a way of opportunity, and this time more equal opportunity, it seems like. And of course, there are so many growing pains, but I think overall, it's like just give these little girls the opportunity to ride their bikes in an environment that keeps them stoked and just they learn to love the bike for what it is, and it's this tool for exploration or community and friendship or whatever it is. And kind of naturally, I mean, that's how I became a racer. I didn't get on my bike and say, I want to do this professionally as fast as I want. or as I can, and I want to win races. It was basically like one foot in front of the other and following a passion. And I mean, I could have ended up as a bike mechanic instead, or as a bike packing tour guide or something. And I think there's so many different pathways that it's not necessarily just a start line. And it could be a start line, but it doesn't really even matter how you do or stack up against competition. And I think that's the beauty of these races that are mass participation. And I think a lot of times I go back to the marathon running model, and the gender gap there is 45-55, I believe. And it's really interesting of I think like gravel races especially are very synonymous to signing up for a marathon. And I think with time it will get to that as the culture shifts and it becomes maybe as mainstream as running. But it's interesting to kind of compare and contrast those two worlds.
Definitely. I mean, those are good words. And for us, I know we're starting to push some time here. Nicole and Kyle, as an organization, we're going to continue to strive to obviously support, the Katerina Nashes of the world, the Anna Yamauchis of the world, and that 10 to 13-year-old young lady that's deciding that she wants to race, and the Olympians are born that way. Great racers are born that way, but more importantly, just good people are born that way, that continue to be on bikes, when they get into that realm, and they tend to support organizations like ours just being out on the trails, and I think for us, anything that we can do, to invest in ladies cycling is investing in the very trails itself. Yeah, that's a leap, that's a stretch, digging dirt. But I think that, families come to the mountains and ride bikes, more now maybe than they ever have done in the past. And I think that, definitely Anna, Katerina, your promotion and what you do for the industry, I think helps, where the families, where it is, if it's the old mother, father, daughter, son, whatever the workup may be. But those young ladies on the trails, beginning now, I think is, help secure the future for outdoor recreation, and it supports us as an organization. Not just because our events do that, but let's go some quick final thoughts. I mean, Nicole, Kyle, events coming up. Just Nicole, real quick. Just maybe some final thoughts on where we're going and how we're going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes you think about like that representation thing is so important. And I feel like if we could put an emphasis somewhere, it really be like, how do we kind of like build those junior categories, and try to get it's like you want to get them while they're young, and because NICA is so popular, and not everybody who does NICA will stick with racing or will stick with cross country. There's so many different ways to go, but it makes me just feel like really trying to focus on the junior categories is some, is like a direction that we should put some effort into, however we can. Obviously, it can be difficult, but I think that's worthy of exploration for sure.
Yeah, and Kyle, I mean, to you, I know we're in similar. I mean, you, Nicole, and I, we're all on the same page, and we're on the same pathway. But yeah, so your thoughts as how we continue to move forward.
I think just listening. Even this conversation today with Katerina and Anna, like I appreciate everything you guys have said, and I've learned things. Obviously, like I said, I don't have a huge background in cycling, so for me, helping oversee these events, there's a lot of learning, and we're trying to do the best we can. So I think just that, and just encouraging women in any way we can, making our events a blast for them when they come. However we can do that, I think is important as we continue to try to move forward.
And Anna, if you had to just, reach out now on the platform, if young ladies and wise ladies are listening and they want to be on their bikes, give them some words. What do they need to do?
They need to just go have fun. I think it's pretty simple. Yeah.
Katerina, same thing to you. For someone that's that's been successful in doing it for some time, still doing it and doing it awesomely, and we'll hopefully see if you can capture another all mountain world championship. I know that there's some very good competition that will continue to come to Downieville Classic. But to those ladies, young and wise, your final thoughts on being on the bike.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the best way to go. Just don't overthink it. Just jump on the bike, and I personally can't wait to ride with Anna when the snow melts here in the Sierras, and we could just go ride our bikes and have fun. And we'll see you guys later this year at Downieville.
Well, I'm going to thank all of you, for being on Dirt Magic, and you're all definitely a part of Dirt Magic, and that word gets used a lot, but it truly is magical to see you out on the trails. I've watched you both race, to see our organization grow, and with our staff members like Nicole and Kyle, and really taking the stewardship to the next level, and how we do with races. So, I want to thank you, Katerina Nash, Ani Yamauchi, Nicole Formosa, and Kyle Stone, for joining us, and we'll continue to do what we do. And we always want ladies kicking ass in cycling, on the roads, on the trails, on the races, doesn't matter, wherever we can. Thank you all so much for joining us on Dirt Magic. And as I like to always say, we'll see you out on the trails. So we're approaching the weekend, and hopefully you all can get some snow in or some riding in, either way. So good to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You've been listening to Dirt Magic, the podcast, brought to you by the good people of the Sierra Buttes Trail Stewardship. For future and past shows, visit dirtmagicpodcast.com or search for us on your favorite listening platform. Music by The Saddle Tramps. To learn more about supporting the SBTS and upcoming events, visit sierratrails.org. I'm Martin Scheel, and I'll see you out on the trails. Thanks again for listening.